He is an economist, a banker, and the Vice President-elect of Ghana. He will assume office on 7 January 2017. Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia was one time a deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana until his nomination as the vice presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, in 2008, standing alongside presidential candidate Nana Akufo-Addo. Shortly after the 2008 election, Dr. Bawumia resigned as deputy governor at the Bank of Ghana. He was renominated as the NPP vice presidential candidate in the 2012 general elections. Nana Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia lost the presidential elections to President John Dramani Mahama. Dr. Bawumia was the lead witness for the petitioners in the 2012-2013 presidential election petition, which challenged the declaration of President John Mahama as winner of the election. Though the party lost the case at the Supreme Court, Dr. Bawumia's emphasis on the pink sheet as a source document during the court proceedings earned him the nickname Dr. Pink Sheet.
I'm going to ask you to identify this pink sheet from MA Primary School at Sokwa.
Yeah, that is true. I do not find overvoting on this form.
You do not find overvoting on that form, but that is included in paragraph 50 of your affidavit, which refers to 196 polling stations where instances of combined constitutional and statutory violations, malpractices, and irregularities in the nature of overvoting, that overvoting allegation is in error, is it not?
Well, for this particular pink sheet, yes, but I want to see if we are still actually relying on this particular sheet.
Though no scientific research was conducted about his ratings, Dr. Bawumia's ratings surged, and coupled with his loyalty to the New Patriotic Party, he was renominated by the flag bearer of the NPP, Nana Akufo-Addo, the third time as his running mate for the 2016 elections. And in the lead-up to the 2016 elections, he gave lectures and symposiums on the Ghanaian economy and what he thinks should be done to address the challenges facing it.
One of the reasons the John Mahama government has given for requesting the IMF bailout was to help it regain policy credibility. 2 years after the IMF program, however, the government's policy credibility is still in tatters, if not worse. The recent attempted Eurobond issue is an example of the loss of policy credibility. After 4 successive Eurobond issues in 2007, 2013, 2014, and 2015, the attempt by government to issue another Eurobond in 2016 was rebuffed by investors who have become increasingly skeptical of the Ghana story.
In one of the lectures, he said Ghana will have no option than to go to the IMF for a bailout, but this was denied by the government of the day. However, after a couple of months, in April 2015, Ghana went to the Bretton Woods institution for a $918 million support, which will end in 2017.
The government simply used the bond proceeds to finance its deficit rather than refinancing the debt as it said it would in the prospectus to the bond issue. This undermines credibility. As a result of the lack of policy credibility, Ghana is now having to borrow at very high interest rates on the Eurobond market, and it's amongst the highest in the world. And this is not only affecting government, it's also affecting the interest rates that the private sector is able to raise on the international market.
When the green light was given for political parties to campaign, he led a team which was basically stationed in the northern and upper east and upper west regions. The reason was to offset some of the losses the party recorded in the 2008 and 2012 elections. His efforts paid off tremendously, and for the first time, the NPP won a number of seats in the Upper West region, Northern region, and in the Upper East region. At the close of the December 7 polls, the NPP for the first time won 170 seats, with some jokingly saying the number of seats won ties into the 170 questions posed by Dr. Bawumia during his lectures in November 2016 on the economy. Dr. Bawumia's father, Alhaji Mahamudu Bawumia, was a teacher, lawyer, and politician, a Mampugu royal and a paramount chief of the Periga traditional area at the time of his death in September 2002. He was a founding member of the Northern People's Party. The Northern People's Party, together with the National Liberation Movements and other opposition political parties, later merged into the United Party, the forebear of the current New Patriotic Party. Born into a large family, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia was the 12th of his father's 18 children and the second of his mother's 5. After graduating from Tamale Secondary School, he went to the United Kingdom, where he studied banking and obtained the Chartered Institute of Bankers Diploma, ACIB. He obtained a first-class honors degree in economics at Buckingham University in 1987. He then obtained a master's degree in economics at Lincoln College, Oxford, and obtained a PhD in economics at the Simon Fraser University, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, in 1995. His areas of specialization include macroeconomics, international economics, development economics, and monetary policy. He served as an economist at the Research Department of the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C., USA. He has won many awards and scholarships, including Young Researcher Award, Baylor University, Texas, USA, Best Economic Student, Department of Economics, University of Buckingham, and a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, FCIB, in 2007. He is married to Samira Bawumia, and they have 4 children.
The party is overjoyed by what we see today. So clearly, I think we're on the right path and working very hard from now. Sure, victory will come. The change is suddenly coming.
He's not a main man. He's supporting main candidate who is Nana Adwa. So the campaign should not be based on Dr. Bawumia. Dr. Bawumia is going to support, help Nana be able to win. So Nana is being very hard, but just across the campaign in the north. I don't think we are expecting Dr. Bawumia alone to be responsible for getting us more votes in the northern region.
Showed faith vice presidential slot last election. He has shown that there's no reason to ask anybody to change it. The fact that Mahama has given us even bigger things in terms of experience in managing the economy, the African economy. And as you know, the biggest problem facing this country today is our young people. How do we get them jobs, and then how do we educate them and train them for jobs? And Mahama is passionate about the education and training of the people, and also equally passionate about managing the economy, generating tech. So we feel that together it's a great team. We need great team leaders that will lead the MPP.
Mahamudu Bawumia. He's here with 2 of his colleagues, Dr. Anthony Kutu Osei and Kweku Kwating, both members of Parliament. Take it
Yes, thank you very much. I think Nana Akufo-Addo has made it very clear that his government is going to build a globally competitive economy. We have not really been thinking global, and this is what we need to do. That we have to understand that we are in competition with other countries, and investment moves from country to country, and we have to think global. And so, the Nana Akufo-Addo policy, which he stated, is just basically to build the most people-friendly and the most business-friendly economy in Africa. This is the goal that we are going to try to do, the most people-friendly and the most business-friendly. The tax issue is a major issue, because if you are so, fixated on revenue, you will essentially end up hurting your production. And so if you go back into history, you study the economic history of United States, Germany, England, all of them have used the tax, policy to encourage production. And this is why we are saying that, today you have a situation in Ghana, unbelievable situation, when businesses are out on strike. Businesses who should be selling are out on strike. Why are they out on strike? Because they've been overburdened by taxes. And if you don't take care, you'll be chasing the tax revenue and killing businesses. And when you kill businesses, it means you are causing unemployment. And so if you go back, this is why Nana Akufo-Addo is saying, we need to mobilize financial resources. So why are you going to be imposing VAT on financial services? It doesn't make sense in a country which has got a very large unbanked population, and we want people to bank. We will abolish that, he says. We will abolish import duty on all raw materials, because that has been a policy that will help production. Let the businesses produce. Let them make profit. And when they make profit and employ people, we will get income taxes and we will get corporate taxes. So you don't go ahead to kill the business. No, let them bring in the raw materials. Let them produce. Then you will tax, at the end of the day. And so our approach, and this is why we are going to bring down corporate taxes, we'll put incentives for real estate, tax incentives for the real estate sector, the special import levy on imports, the 1 to 2%, we will abolish it. And this is all to ginger up production and ginger up the economy. And I think that you have a government where you have cutlasses being taxed, condoms being taxed, and even savings. There was a 1% imposition on savings, which was later withdrawn.
On investments, yes.
On investments, which was later. I mean, even to think about it it's
been suspended.
It's been suspended. I mean, but even to think about it.
Oh, it's now abolished, is it?
Okay, good. Yeah, but even to think about it, it just questions who are making these policies. I mean,
isn't it just another way?
Another way of raising revenue.
Well, yes,
but when you become desperate, this is what happens, that when you've mismanaged the economy into this hole, then anything sounds great to you because you don't have any option. You see what I mean? And this is the problem, that anything that is taxable, that can feasibly be taxed, they are trying to impose taxes on it, increasing withholding, taxes on withholding, and so on. All of these are hurting. They are hurting the economy. These taxes are hurting. And therefore, you are not going to get the growth. And when you don't get the growth, you will not get the revenue. And when you don't get the revenue, you go back to increasing taxes to get the revenue. And then you are in a cyclical downward spiral. And so they have it wrong. And we will change that particular policy. We will use the tax incentives to grow this economy, and you will get your revenue. I mean, we reduced taxes on corporate from 32 to 25, and we increased revenue. But because of this recklessness, they keep thinking that this is going to be the solution: more taxes, more borrowing, more spending, which results in more taxes.
So your solution is take less, but do more.
Do more. I mean, as I said, we like, if you look at the area of roads, the data is clear. MPP built 8 times more roads than the NDC has done. 8 times. With 10 times less money. 10 times less money, we built 8 times more roads.
They'll argue it's more expensive to build a road today.
Yeah, because of their single source procurement methods. Yeah, of course it will be more expensive. We need to have, better procurement. You don't just go, if you look at SADA, for example, 200 million Ghana cedis, and what do you have for it? I mean, if you had invested this in dams, you would have built thousands of dams to really grow the agricultural sector. And agric is one of those areas we are going to focus on. Corruption has been a major part of our problem. It's been a major part of our problem.
And we do have to talk about that a bit later, actually, if you don't mind. Because I want us to finish all the economic issues and then move on to the
So I think that we're going to have to grow this economy, put in the incentives for production, and also to invest. One of the sad things, because infrastructure investment is good for any economy to increase your production and your productivity. One of the sad things we've had in this country is that you've had all these resources. Government has had the most unbelievable amount of resources, all right, 200 billion Ghana cedis over 7 years, compared to 20 billion by the MPP government over 8 years. They've had 200 billion in 7 years. And at the same time, infrastructure investment as a percentage of GDP is falling. It has declined. And when they tried to challenge me the other day and I produced the data, they have run away and haven't come back. The infrastructure investment as a percentage of GDP during the MPP era averaged about 11%, and it's averaging 5%. It has declined. And that doesn't make sense. Because if you're going to grow an economy, your infrastructure investment as a proportion of GDP should be increasing, especially when you've become an oil producer. You must increase infrastructure investment. So they are out there touting projects that they have done. But what they are not telling the Ghanaian people is that, in fact, their investment in infrastructure has declined. Unbelievably declined. And we should have been doing, 4 or 5 times as much as we are doing today in infrastructure investment, because you are borrowing and spending only 20% of that borrowing on capital expenditure. So what are you doing with the rest? The IMF managing director has said that they've been doing more consumption than investment. And that is an indictment on the management of the economy, because if you have this type of economy, to grow it, you have to invest. If you are declining investment, decreasing investment, when you have got all these resources, it's inexplicable and unforgivable. And I think the Ghanaian people should hold them accountable. So this mantra that they are doing all these projects is an attempt to hoodwink Ghanaians. We, with those resources, we could have solved the water problem in this country. We could have solved the energy problem. We could have solved agric in terms of dams and so on. I mean, there are many problems that we could have done. And can you imagine if you had just put $1 billion in each region? Right? Just say spend $1 billion. You transform the country. That is just $10 billion of the 37 that they've borrowed, right? They have actually just given it to each region $1 billion. That's 1,000 kilometers of road, for example. If you're doing $1 million per kilometer or whatever, I mean 1,000 kilometers of road in each region is high. So we are going to do a lot in terms of investment, because we think that these guys who are in charge of this economy have not invested in this economy.
Okay.
And so you're going to have to invest in this economy and do the agriculture, focus on the agriculture. We're growing at 0.04%. Zero. Crops are declining. Manufacturing is declining.
Sometimes it's
so
difficult.
you have a problem.
Sometimes it's difficult for the perspective of that 0.04 to sink in. And to be fair, this is what it actually means. That if you were to take 1% and divide it by 25,
yes,
we have grown by one of those.
That's right.
Yes.
This is agriculture.
This is the mainstay of this economy.
It's an issue, but let's be fair. Let's be fair. The government themselves recognize that it's an issue. They have talked about some policies that they want to put in place, some new innovations they want to put in place.
But they've been in charge for 7 years. I mean, they've had a promise over 7 years. I mean, and how can't you deliver on agriculture? In fact, it doesn't make sense. And this is why I said, for example, if you had to do in the north. I've just come back from the Upper West region, and the whole dry season farming and the need for dams is so huge that I don't understand why we are not investing in these areas. From plains, I mean, the opportunities are there, and it's not a matter of money. We've had the money, we just haven't prioritized it. And that is the difference between an Nana Akufo-Addo government and this government. We will prioritize all of these things and do what we need to do to grow this economy and create jobs.
I want us to round up quickly on the economy. There are a couple of things I would like us to touch on. For example, the depreciating Cedi and this microfinance situation. But before we get to those, you said something earlier about the IMF. In fact, you called into question a lot of the design of the program, and specifically when you talked about fiscal consolidation. In fact, you said it's crazy. But I'm curious. Why do you think? What's the motive? Why do you think the IMF would agree to Ghana going into a crazy?
Well, I think one has to be measured in words. Crazy may not be a good way to talk about it. These are very smart people and all, and very concerned, I think, about what they do, and they take what they do seriously. I think that when you look at the fiscal consolidation that is taking place, you've had a reduction in the deficit to about 7.5%, and I think the goal down the road is to get to 6.5% and lower. The MPP left the economy at a deficit of 6.5%. So even after a lot of fiscal consolidation, they haven't even got to where the MPP left the economy off in 2008. But the point I am making is that if you design a fiscal consolidation program with a country that is debt distressed, and you don't anchor that consolidation on a reduction in the debt to GDP ratio, and rather allow the country to continue borrowing. But this is a homegrown program. So I'm not going to blame the IMF. It's the design of this government.
Yes, but why did the IMF accept this as part of their program?
That is in terms of the negotiation. That is what they negotiated. But the government claims credit for the program, and we should say that they convinced the IMF it would work, or so the IMF thought it would work. But my sense is that when you look at the design of the program, the fact that you haven't really had a deliberate policy of bringing down the debt has been increasing under the program. When you have an economy in debt distress, for me, I can't fathom that. If you were someone has been borrowing, an individual, and you want to help them, and you say, okay, you can keep borrowing, but that doesn't make sense to me. I'm humbly suggesting that design is flawed. That if you had anchored the program fiscal consolidation on a reduction also in the debt to GDP ratio, you would have had more of a crowding in of the private sector. Government would have borrowed less, interest rates would have fallen, and you would have had more investment because you would have had a crowding in. The economics of that is straightforward, and so that is why I am critiquing the government. That you cannot just, because we are doing fiscal consolidation for a purpose. It's not just that I've brought the deficit down, but you are doing it so that you will bring interest rates down, you bring inflation down, you grow the economy, you create jobs. That is the purpose. You are not just saying I'm doing fiscal consolidation, I'm bringing the deficit down, so I've brought the deficit down, okay, but my businesses are collapsing, people are out of job, and that sort of thing. That is not a success. Interest rates are skyrocketing. Today, as high as 35%, banks are charging for loans, and they are not even lending. Non-performing loans have gone up to about 15%. Right? Banks are not even interested now in lending to businesses. They are rather lending to government because it's the easy way to do. We've gone back to the pre-2000 era in terms of economic and financial management, where banks find it now more easier. During the MPP era, the financial sector reforms really and the fiscal consolidation crowded in the private sector. Banks were chasing people to give them loans. Today they are running away from people, and so we are very, very clear in our mind that this fiscal consolidation that the NDC is talking about, that they have achieved something, and saying that the program is on track. If it's on track and it's not moving, well, it doesn't make sense. It can be on the track, but it's not moving or moving backwards, because you cannot explain that after so many a year and a half of the program, inflation is at 19% and going up. You have growth declining, you have interest rates increasing, and so on. That is not what fiscal consolidation is supposed to achieve. And for me, at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So you look at what is the objective, and have you achieved that objective? At this rate, when will we get back to single digit?
But let's not create the impression that IMF is happy. In fact, if we listen to what Dr. Bawumia said, when the deputy managing director has to fly in and tell you that you are spending the borrowing on consumption, you should be worried. Another signal is that a review was to have taken place in February. They've shifted it to April. That should worry us Ghanaians. Are they going to pull out? What's going to happen? And we understand that their concern is this additional Eurobond that the government wants to issue. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. But if that happens, please, we're in trouble.
Wow. Okay, we have lots more to talk about, but just the economy. Other things that have been criticized by the opposition include non-payment of statutory funds, the depreciation of the Cedi, this microfinance crisis, and some of the interventions that the government has put in place, like SADA, which you earlier mentioned, and so forth. These things have been heavily criticized by you. But when you think of the reality of the situation, yes, if indeed you are right that they've mismanaged the economy to the point where they don't have funds to do these things or to manage these problems, like the depreciation of the Cedi and the microfinance thing properly, then is there a point of, criticizing that as well? Isn't it a bit like criticizing someone for not being able to swim and then acting surprised when they start drowning?
But when you are hiring them and they tell you they can swim, and then you put them in the water and they cannot swim, you better criticize them. You will have to criticize them because they said they would swim, but they are drowning all of us in debt and taxes. And that is they said they could swim, but we found out to our detriment that they can't.
It's interesting. I mean, for example, the non-payment of statutory funds is a problem that has been long-standing.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, the government has to make decisions when it comes to how to disperse their funds and put them to the most important uses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is this not a bitter pill that we all have to take?
You said statutory. I'm not a lawyer. The law says you must pay. You are collecting. It's the timing that you are not meeting. DACF, you're supposed to pay quarter in the lag. Yesterday, I had an interesting conversation on one of your competitors I won't mention, but I heard a minister saying that, we don't have arrears on DACF. We all know that 2014 fourth quarter is in arrears. And you say that you don't have arrears.
Wow. That probably means they won't get paid then.
No, it's going to, he said, we promised in the previous budget to pay the following year. You are breaking the law. Should we allow a government to break the law? If the government does that, we, the poor citizens, what do we do? You see, there's something about governance, I'm sure you come to that is also not right. Now people have accepted that it should be the norm. It cannot be. It cannot be. And then we are told that revenue is on track. I mean, you cannot have your cake and eat it.
Yeah, but I think to be fair to the government also, I mean, the IMF, one of the criteria because they've also taken this issue, one of the conditions that they've set for the government is to make sure there are no arrears on these statutory funds.
Right.
In fact, if you look at the technical memorandum of understanding, they are even saying that it should be monthly. You shouldn't go beyond...
Except for DACF.
Except for DACF.
And to add further, for that reason, last year, the government paid one of them ahead of time.
Wow.
Yes, the 2015.
We should have had a whole show to congratulate them.
But I think that we have to be fair. But the issue for where, I mean, you go to health service providers, for example, and so many health service providers are in trouble because they've provided services under the NHIS, and for 8 months they have not been paid, and that is really a problem now, and we are converting this NHIS into a cash and carry system, because if for 8 months you haven't been paid but you have to pay salaries and so on, you will start rejecting people on NHIS because when you provide a service you don't get paid, and that is what is happening, that a lot of people are not getting paid, and that is a real problem. That this is what Nana Akufo-Addo was talking about, that the NHIS has become a two-tier system where those with the cards have one type of service and those with cash have another type of service. This is not how it was initially designed, and we need to look into that.
Okay, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to hear the NPP's solution on unemployment from Kweku Kwarteng. We will also speak more to Dr. Bawumia and Dr. Akoto-Osei about other issues, corruption and health, which has been an issue on most networks since the beginning of the year, health infrastructure, and this accident at Kintampo and the aftermath of all of that. We'll talk about the 2 laws that Nana Akufo-Addo says he will do something about. This
right to information.
Yes, right to information bill, which, my goodness, has been floating through the system since God was a boy, and then also the new spy bill. We'll find out what exactly the NPP plans to do about these two and whether or not their plans are realistic. There's so much more to learn. Stay with us. We're back after these messages. You're welcome back to the Super Morning Show. It's about 8 minutes to 9. A couple of tweets that I'm interested in. Let me read them quickly. Pardon me. Bad cough today. Okay, this one is from Kwame Kisiedu. He says, are the NPP not Ghanaians? And if they happen to have the best economist as claimed, why not help Ghana? Okay, I think that's what they are suggesting. That's what they want to do, and that's why they're asking you to vote for them. Or maybe you want them to do it without being in power. Well, I'll ask Dr. Bawumia for an answer for you. This one says, this is from Nana Ujiri. Thanks to Dr. Bawumia and his learned team, they've displayed that brains develop a nation, not resources. Well, I think some resources would help.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay. So let's very quickly whistle through a few of the other issues that are outstanding. Corruption. Now, the NPP has made a lot of noise about the Smarties bus branding.
Do you do the employment?
Oh yes. Pardon me. Yes, that too. Let's actually start with that unemployment. Now, during the break, Kweku Kwating was sharing some views on how the unemployment problem would be solved if the NPP were to win power in November. So why don't you elaborate, please?
Sure. That point was made by Nana in his delivery, and Alhaji Bawumia has canvassed that solution this morning already. You see, when a government chooses to overtax its citizens and businesses, the effect is that economic activities shrink, and then opportunities to employ people would go with the shrinking. And in our case, the situation is made worse by the fact that government has additionally been competing with the private sector on the domestic money market. That is to say, government is lending on the domestic market and offering higher rates than businesses can offer. All that would conspire to create a situation where the economy would not grow. And it is not for nothing that the economy, which grew by 9% in 2008, which grew by 14% in 2011 when oil came on stream, is now growing at a rate of less than 4%. It is a direct result of government's overtaxation and government's competition with the private sector on the domestic market. So once we free the private sector to expand economic activity, that would come with job creation. And then on the manpower side, Nanado did make the point that we need to review our manpower training strategies. The skill training that you want to offer to your youth will have to be reviewed. I mean, we started the National Youth Employment Program in 2007. That was turned into GDA and now YEA, and has been turned into a vehicle for siphoning money from public funds into private pockets. Corruption. What an NPP administration will do is to review that to ensure that while the private sector is giving room to expand economic activity and create jobs, people would be equipped with the skill to take up these job opportunities. I mean, in summary, that is our strategies for providing employment, and I'm confident it's a very workable strategy.
Very well. Okay, so let's go into corruption next. Dr. Bawumia, the Smarties deal has been criticized by so many, and for obvious reasons. The government themselves put together a report that determined that this company was overpaid for this deal. Now, the criticism has been from the NPP that why not prosecute those who were behind this thing? Now, I spoke to the General Secretary of the NDC after the President's State of the Nation address, and I asked him the same question. His answer was that, look, we're a poor country. People have taken our money without, illegally taken our money, unlawfully taken our money. We can get it back. Let's get it back. But why go through the extra expense of prosecution when we're on a shoestring budget? Is that not a fair question?
It's unbelievable. I mean, you mean nobody should be prosecuted? Once they've stolen money, you should just try to get it back? Well, of course, that's the strategy they've employed for Wyoming. Also, maybe that he should pay it back. I don't know.
Yeah. He was asking for 3 years to pay back.
Yeah, he's now given us a timetable for actually it is unbelievable. If you are a nation of laws, you've got to enforce the laws. I mean, the procurement process, as we all know, this Smarties contract went for procurement approval after it had already been awarded. The whole process of the award of that contract really stinks, and there have to have been people who saw this thing through. Of course, the minister resigned, but she could not have had been the only person who authorized this transaction to take place. There are people, I mean, in complete violation of our laws. And so even if you're going to get the money back, you will need to set some standards so that there is a deterrence for people to do this. So now people know that if you steal money, once you are caught, well, they will just give you some time to pay back. Now, without that deterrence, then of course everybody is going to try to steal as much as possible. So I think that it's very sad, that approach, and I think this is really why Nana Akufo-Addo made the point that fight against corruption in this sense is really a sham. It's really a sham.
But surely you have to give them some credit. They signed this deal with the company, and then in response to questions raised, they went ahead and took some money back.
This contract was paid with oil revenue, right? It came out of the oil account. Our oil money, was being used to pay for Smarties rebranding. To access that oil account, people higher up ought to know, because the oil is designated for certain specific purposes. So this whole thing, I don't really think we've gotten to the bottom of it, quite frankly. And I think that there should have been much more, because that whole deterrence is not there.
You're suggesting there's someone higher up than the ministers?
I don't know, but I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense the way. Who can access the oil account to pay for this, and all of that. It doesn't make sense that this contract was issued and even worked on before procurement approval was sought. What was the emergency if to do this? It doesn't make sense. So I think we have much better things to spend our oil revenue. I was in the Upper West recently. As you all know, we went to Percy MA Primary School.
Oh yes, the kids who didn't have furniture.
Who didn't have furniture.
Absolutely.
And this money that was used for brass branding could have solved the furniture problems of many schools.
Let's be honest, Dr. Bawumia, that trip up there to that school, was it not just a little bit of smart politicking? You noticed a problem had been announced, and then you thought, let me just turn up and show that I care.
Perhaps let me answer it for him.
And it worked.
Well, you know why? You know why? If smart politicking can get kids to have tables, so be it.
The whole issue that you are looking at children without desks. When I saw the story, honestly, initially, when I heard the story, I could not believe it. I really could not believe it, because if you are looking to be in charge of the economy of this country, inshallah, as vice president and head of the economic management team, one needs to be very familiar with the ground. And I'm doing a lot of these trips to really be able to assess for myself, what is the situation, what are the needs? And so when you go to an area and they tell you that kids are lying on the floor and studying, you ought to go and see it for yourself.
But why are you surprised? The schools under trees and all of these things have been happening during Kufuor's time.
But as I said, once that story broke up, of course, there have been schools under trees and so on, and you go to see them. I saw a few schools under trees. I've seen a few schools under trees on my trips, and I've stopped to see them as well.
They've been around for ages.
Once this issue came up, I had to go and see it for myself. I saw it as a duty to go and see it for myself and see these poor suffering kids and do the little that I could to help. And that is exactly what happened. Of course, in the process, the government got very embarrassed.
So you should visit more schools.
Yes, I am getting, I'm getting a lot of invitations by schools, because they think that maybe if I come there, the government would actually provide them with the things they are looking for. So we're going to do that. But interestingly, this wasn't even the only school that I have helped in this. I visited Nope in Amenfi West, Nope Primary School, and I went there, and they had exactly the same situation. So I left I contributed something to them to get chairs and tables. That wasn't reported, but this was when I went to the Amenfi West district. You know, so this isn't the first time, and I think that if you were just politicking, then I would have made a big deal about the no-pay donation, but I didn't.
Well, they're hearing about it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if one would have done that. But I think that we've got to expose the true state of the economy to people.
Yeah.
You know, because this was the same day that the president was giving his State of the Nation address and painting a very different picture from the true picture on the ground. And therefore, we had to let people see what the true picture. And so corruption takes away these opportunities for our kids, whether in schools or in hospitals or on farms. The corruption, whether it's in SADA or JIDA or Smarties or Car Power, is a major, major problem for our people.
So your government will prosecute?
Well, I think Nana Akufo-Addo has said that one of the things that he's going to do is to establish an independent prosecutor's office with a legislative mandate to deal with corruption. Because, for example, the Attorney General has recommended that prosecution should take place. Now, she is the person responsible for prosecution. So why are you recommending? Who else do you want to tell you to prosecute? It's your responsibility. What is the purpose of that
with your supervisor?
Yeah, your supervisor. It shouldn't be. This is why Nana Akufo-Addo is saying that we need an office of an independent prosecutor, so that you are doing it and don't have to check with your supervisor to see whether this person is prosecutable. If it was obviously an MPP person, I'm sure they wouldn't have even checked. They would have gone. But because these are NDC people who have been involved in this, I'm sure they are looking to see if they should go ahead. Yes. But it's not for them to decide. That's what the law says.
Okay, now. Let's segue into a bit of education, since we were just talking about schools. The other things you've criticized that the president has done: free school uniforms, school feeding, free shoes, sandals. Surely, for those who have benefited from these things, for those who have come into the gallery and been introduced to the nation as beneficiaries of some of these things, to them this is great, and they won't be happy to hear you criticize some of these life-changing policies that the government has put in place.
Well, I don't know how life-changing they are, but I'm sure for any kid or the 10,000 kids, I think they were supposed to give 10,000 kids school sandals for school and some school uniforms and so on. I mean, these are really at the margin and not really fundamental, things that will change education. 10,000 out of, hundreds of thousands of kids. What impact are you going to make with that? Kids want to be able to go to school. They want to be fed. They said the school feeding was going to be extended to every school. It hasn't. They want to be able to have access to education in terms of being able to. Parents need to be able to afford the fees to go in there to study and so on. So I think that in terms of education, definitely we should be doing more. I think the president is saying that they are doing 200 senior secondary schools. So far they've completed 4.
And they haven't changed the deadline.
Yeah, they have not changed the deadline. So we have 7 months to commission 6. So we will hold them to it and move on.
Now, regarding things like sandals, uniforms, and so forth, the Minister for Education has a theory that, especially for kids who are going into school a bit too late, they come into school and there's that stigma, the fact that they are taller than everyone, they are wearing different clothes and all that, and it's likely to lead to a lot of people dropping out because it's better for them to just go and help their dads with the fish or whatever than come to school and look odd. because they don't have the uniform and stand out and be, bullied and so forth. So in that regard, is this not a positive intervention that is going to help people, increase attendance and hopefully increase the education coverage across the nation?
I don't see that nexus at all. I think we've had people who have been attending school, even if they have been over age, for years. I think school uniforms are great if everybody can have them and all of that. But you need more to be able to bring quality education. And if you cancel teacher training allowances, you cannot maybe get the quality. A lot of people will not be able to go into teacher training, even though they are very smart. You will not be able to get the quality of teachers that you have. If teachers are working for 2 years and you only pay them 3 months in arrears, there is no motivation. A lot, because of the government's financial difficulties, they are even sending BNI to schools to examine certificates of teachers. BNI into schools to examine. I mean, who employed them in the first place? On what basis were they employed? Why do you now have to almost criminalize hard-working teachers for working? In the meantime, you are paying them something, and then you are saying that you are not able to pay them all the arrears because you are checking the certificates. It doesn't make sense, and you are really scamming them in a way by refusing to pay for services done. And you are using the certificate issue really as an excuse to delay. They're really not. It's not been fair. So I think that if you really need quality education, you need really motivated teachers, and we need to and the right inputs. Yeah.
All right, couple of minutes on Dumso, and I have just one question here.
Yeah.
Yes, the president says that they have done the fastest mobilization of emergency power in the history of Ghana.
Really?
4 years.
That's what he
fastest in 4 years. It took 4 years to mobilize.
Yes.
And that is supposed to be fast.
However,
that is really scary.
Well,
I mean, if that is their sense of fast. Okay.
The question is still to come. I'm just wondering, whatever you may say about how he described what they've done, the fact is that we now have a better power situation than before. And members of your own party have admitted that yes, they've done something.
And how long is that sustainable?
Well, they've solved the problem. They said they would by the end of the year.
Emergency
power.
power.
Understand the problem.
We've always said, and this thing, when this government came in, there was no Dumso. They inherited an economy without Dumso.
But we've had it periodically throughout the years.
But they inherited an economy without Dumso. Dumso really started in earnest 4 years ago. So they, through their own financial mismanagement that compromised the balance sheets of VRA and others, ECG and so on, caused Dumso. We always told you Dumso was a financial problem, and they denied it. But once you then bring in resources to bring in emergency power at very, very high cost, again, car power and so on, these are sole sourcing procurement that took place, and the cost of those things is very high. So when you cause a problem and you've given me a temporary solution to it, and you expect me to give you credit, you must be joking. You have caused the problem. You should be solving it. I'm not going to, you've dug a hole and filled it and say I should praise you. No, you should have done much better. That's this temporary solution is not. Listen, we have lost so much as an economy over the last 4 years because of Dumso. People have died because of Dumso. You've lost in 4 years about $3 billion in this economy. So much unemployment, and it really frustrates me when this government wants to take credit for providing this temporary solution. They haven't really provided a permanent solution. It's a temporary solution, and they are not understanding understanding the cost to this economy of Dumso. 2% of GDP a year, the growth, that decline that we are seeing, the job losses that we are seeing, a lot of businesses have had to fold up. This is a major cost to this economy, and it's because of Dumso. And Dumso, it has been caused by the financial and economic mismanagement of this government. And so we shouldn't be giving them credit for solving a problem that they have solved. Fastest, 4 years, fastest mobilization.
Well,
I mean,
Dr. Bawumia, do you know what I've never heard?
Yes.
I have never heard the NPP's permanent solution to Dumso.
See,
policy environment.
You know, Nana Akufo-Addo was talking about the whole power issue and what we ought to be doing. We had obviously started, and Dr. Akoto said at Ministry of Finance, negotiated quite a lot. We had started a lot of projects in thinking about the way forward. We obviously would not have mismanaged the economy to the extent that we couldn't get VRA to import crude and all of that. And you need to get the private sector involved in power production and look at the whole generation, distribution, and transmission links to get optimal power production. And I think that you had a lot. If the climate is good, you'll get the investment coming in for us to deal with the problem. So we would look to bringing in generating capacity from various sources, but mainly the private sector is going to lead the way in this. And I think that if the pricing is competitive, you will get a lot more investment.
Competitive pricing means higher tariffs, does it not?
You need more efficiency. It doesn't necessarily mean higher tariffs. You know, if you go and impose taxes on the automatic adjustment formula, you impose taxes, of course the tariffs will be high. I mean, we are seeing high imposition of taxes on because of the government's mismanagement. You know, so I think that you will need to have a combination of getting more efficiency from the distribution and the transmission and generation sectors, as well as more investment. And in many countries, you have to be planning ahead. The lessons that we've learned, that you've got to get, because the economy is growing, power needs are also going to grow. And so if you stay put, you will have a problem.
But one of the things that's not being said, most people don't understand, is that these so-called additional generation that the president was talking about, TICO, KTTP, Asogle, they were started during the MPP time.
Absolutely.
Because you need 2 or 3 year lag to bring generation capacity.
Right.
Bui Dam was started in the MPP time. So, except for Ameri and Car Power, most of them started during the MPP time, and that's the planning. But they suspended most of them for obvious reasons, and it took them 7 years, as I said, to solve it. If they had continued, KTPP was started during that time, Senate, this is all plans that the energy sector put in place at that time. So it's not that they came and started those things. And those are yielding fruits now, except for Car Power and Ameri. And just on a lighter note, it is not surprising that the Prime Minister of Turkey was here because of Car Power. It's not a coincidence.
But Kojo, if I can add this bit, increasingly, US domestic units not getting power because of intermittent interruptions, then government say, well, that one is a local problem, as though distribution is not part of the energy sector. I think government has to review its position on this, so that we would make sufficient investments in distribution, so that where we even do not have this nationwide power rationing, at least in our localities, we can enjoy uninterrupted power supply. After all, what is the point if there's no power rationing, but somehow your transformer isn't working, and so you do not have power? It still comes back to the same problem, and government must begin to own the distribution issues as well.
And ECOWAS was concerned, and we ended up striking oil. Initially, we were told it was just cooking oil that we had found, and not real oil. We put in place the West African gas pipeline, the Bui Dam. We started work on the 126 megawatts VRA Thermal 1 plant, the 50 megawatts Thermal 2 plant, the 220 megawatts Pone Thermal plant as well as the 126 or so megawatt Osono plant. You know, the Abuazi plant, that Takoradi 1, was also initiated by the MPP. And so was the 220 megawatt Asogli, Sunon Asogli plant, which was completed towards the end of the MPP administration. So there were a lot of projects as far as energy was concerned.
You know, when
and
you
they should have continued when they came in with these things, and we shouldn't have had these problems.
When you give these,
be, inshallah, the next president of the Republic of Ghana. That is the bottom line, and there is no other thinking beyond that.
Well, as a smart party, will plan for all eventualities. So,
we are only focused on the 2016 election,
and you are not losing that.
I would like to say that there are only 250 days to go to the election.
Yes,
and Ghanaians, really, we should get up and be ready for that change. 250 days to change. 250 days to the restoration of teacher training allowances, nursing training allowances, 250 days to the abolishment of some of these onerous taxes on our businesses, 250 days to say bye-bye to this massive corruption, 250 days that are left to begin creating the most business-friendly and the most people-friendly economy on the face of Africa. We are going to transform this country. We believe that we can do so. I believe that we can do so under the leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend and listen to this lecture on the current state of our economy. First of all, I would like to assure all Ghanaians that this lecture, as has been the case with all my lectures, will be based on an objective analysis of the data that we have in the economy. Ultimately, the data and the facts will speak for themselves. So, what does the data say about the state of our economy after 8 years of economic management under the NDC, with President John Mahama in charge as the head of the economic management team for 4 years and president for another 4? Mr. Chairman, any assessment about the state of the economy and the performance of the government must be against the background of the amount of money or resources that has been available that has been at the disposal of any government. At a public lecture in September 2008, the then Vice President, Shell candidate John Mahama, said, and I quote, "To whom much is given, much is expected," end quote. I would like, with his permission, to borrow his exact words to describe his government's exact performance in the last 8 years. In this regard, it is important to emphasize, for the record, that measured in terms of today's dollars and cedis, no government since independence has had the amount of resources in terms of tax revenue, cocoa exports, gold exports, oil revenues, and loans as the two NDC administrations between 2009 and 2016. Under the 8 years of the MPP government, from 2001 to 2008, taxes and loans only amounted to 20 billion Ghana cedis. In contrast, taxes, loans, and oil revenues alone over the last 8 years would amount to 248 billion Ghana cedis. So, what you see in the diagram, in the graph there, the Mills Mahama government over the last 8 years would have had more than 12 times the nominal resources that the MPP had. 12 times the number. The question, therefore, Ghanaians should be asking is, how has the management of the huge resources at the disposal of the John Mahama government impacted on the economy? Let's look at the real sector. Mr. Chairman, a key statistic that measures the performance of any economy is its gross domestic product. This is the total income of the country or its total production. If the country were a maize farm, the GDP will be the total bags of corn that we produce every year. If the economy is doing well, we will produce more bags of corn each year. If, however, you can only account for a few bags of corn after 8 years of farming, you cannot attempt to claim credit by saying that you used a lot of fertilizer. If in the presence of good rains you claim to have used a lot of fertilizer, end up with a poor harvest, you are likely not a good farmer. Mr. Chairman, a second and just as important statistic is how many people in the country have benefited from the bags of corn we produce. Are incomes rising for all or just a few? Data from the real sector indicates the following developments over the last 8 years and before. Between December 2000, Mr. Chairman, and December 2008, without oil, economic growth in Ghana increased from 3.7% to 9.1%. Without oil. After declining to 4.8% in 2009, real GDP growth increased to 7% in 2010 and 14% in 2011 because of the discovery of oil. However, since 2011, real GDP has declined steadily and drastically to 3.9% in 2015. Mr. Chairman, you recall that in 2000 we were growing at 3.7% when we were hipping. After discovering oil, we are pretty much growing at the same rate. President Mahama's tenure of office, as can be seen in the graph, has been characterized by declining economic growth. And this is what you see. From 2012, 2013 coming down, you've come all the way down. Mr. Chairman, between 2000 and 2008, the size of Ghana's economy increased from $5.1 billion to $28.5 billion. This was a 59% increase in 8 years. Even in the face of global economic and financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, with oil prices reaching a record high $147 a barrel, economic growth, as I said, rose to 9.1% in 2008. However, notwithstanding the oil discovery, GDP has increased from $28.5 billion in 2008 to a projected $40 billion in 2016, which is a 40% increase in 8 years. But you will see what is interesting about this data is that MPP increased GDP by 459%, NDC increased it by 40%, but when you look at the tenure of President Mahama, between 2012 and 2016, Ghana's GDP has shrunk by 5%. So this is Mahama as president, and this is the NDC. Mr. Chairman, under the NDC, GDP per capita, that is the income per capita, has recorded a growth of 17% in 8 years, from $1,266 to a projected $1,481 in 2016. This is with oil revenue. Under John Kufuor, the story was very different. GDP increased by 187% from $440 to $1,286 without oil. So, ladies and gentlemen, you see from the graph that whilst under the MPP, per capita income increased by $826. The increase in per capita income was $826. Under the NDC, the increase in per capita income has been $215. So, with 12 times less resources, the MPP increased per capita income by 4 times than the NDC. And if you look at this story, the NDC increased per capita income by only 215% or 17%. But under the tenure of John Mahama, per capita income actually declined by 12%. And this is it. It declined by 12%. Mr. Chairman, this is essentially the difference between competent economic management and incompetent economic management. It also tells us fundamentally that Ghana's problem is not about resources. Our problem is the efficient and honest management of the resources. Mr. Chairman, let's look at the standard of living of our people. In dollar terms, Mr. Chairman, under the NDC government over the last 8 years, the minimum wage has declined from $2.12 to $2.02. That is a decline in the minimum wage by 4.6%. Between 2012 and 2016, which is the tenure of President Mahama, the minimum wage in dollar terms has declined by 23%. In comparison, Mr. Chairman, the MPP under President Kufuor increased the minimum wage from 62 cents to $2.12. That is an increase of 244%, which is what you see here. Mr. Chairman, furthermore, the data shows that as national income increased in the 2001 to 2008 period, people at the bottom of the income scale became better off. In the period 2009 to 2016, however, as income has increased, those at the bottom of the income scale have become worse off. While the income inequality measured by the change in the minimum wage relative to the change in income improved by 1.8% during 2001 to 2008, it has seen a major decline since 2008, and the worst decline occurring during the tenure of John Mahama as president once again. So whilst you see the inequality, you saw improvement by 1.8%. Under the NDC as a whole, you saw a decline of 2.8%, but John Mahama's tenure, during his tenure, the income inequality worsened by 5%. According to the United Nations Human Development Index, Mr. Chairman, which is an index which measures progress in income, literacy, and life expectancy, for the period between 2000 and 2014, Ghana made the most progress in human development during the 2000 and 2010 period. Now, guess which government was mainly in power in that period? The average growth rate of Ghana's Human Development Index has declined from 1.33 between 2000 and 2010 to 1.13 between 2010 and 2014. So not only are we doing worse off in terms of income, we are also doing worse off in terms of the measure of human development. Mr. Chairman, so you see that agricultural output has also been on the decline, and this has been, and Ghana's food import bill has increased dramatically from $600 million in 2008 to $2.1 billion, and rice imports, for example, increased by 52% from 395,400 metric tons in 2008 to over 600,000 metric tons by 2015. It's important that we try to understand what the minister is saying. He said that out of the $1 million Eurobond, we just spent about 500 million and carried the remaining 500 million as buffer as we go into zero financing, so that when we have an uncovered auction, we are able to use the World Bank money, which we should have used entirely for domestic, to get into that policy, to ride on that policy. If you understand what exactly the minister is trying to say, what the minister has admitted is quite unbelievable. You go to the international capital market to borrow at 10.75% and decide to park those funds as idle funds in the Bank of Ghana or maybe in UBA, just in case you have an auction failure. So why borrow funds at such a high rate if you have no use for them? Why borrow funds at such a high rate if you have no use for them? It is very bad economic management, pure and simple. The government simply used the bond proceeds to finance its deficit rather than refinancing the debt as it said it would in the prospectus to the bond issue. This undermines credibility. As a result of the lack of policy credibility, Ghana is now having to borrow at very high interest rates on the Eurobond market, and it's amongst the highest in the world. And this is not only affecting government, it's also affecting the interest rates that the private sector is able to raise on the international market. Figure 15. The next figure shows that when Ghana issued its first Eurobond under the NPP government in 2007, the spread, which is the difference between the interest rate on the Eurobond and US Treasuries of similar tenor, when we issued that first Eurobond, the spread was only 3.7%. This spread is really the premium that investors demand over and above prevailing interbank interest rates. It is really a measure of a borrower's risk. The lower the number for the premium paid, the higher the credit readiness of the borrower, and vice versa. The second and third bonds were issued under the NDC in 2013 and 2014 at higher spreads of 5.4% and 5.72% respectively. Ironically, our credit worthiness has been decreasing since we became an oil exporting country. In 2015, notwithstanding a World Bank guarantee, the spread was the highest so far at 8.34%. Clearly, confidence in the management of our economy has eroded in the eyes of the international investor community as the years have gone by under the NDC's economic management. It comes therefore as no surprise that our fifth Eurobond, which was rejected by the market when the government tried to borrow for 10 years. Today, as we speak, contrary to its stated objectives, government of borrowing long term, the government has been telling us, the minister has been telling us they are trying to shift the yield curve to the longer end of the market and they are borrowing long term, right? Today, as we speak, contrary to its stated objectives of borrowing long term, the government is now being forced by the market to borrow short to medium terms for 5 years against the stated objective. So today, Ghana has issued a bond in the London markets for $750 million for a 5-year tenor at a price of over 9%. And so the spread, again, for the 5-year tenor is about 8%, which is so high. It's very expensive money. When we just got out of HIPIC, we borrowed for 10 years at 8.5%. Now, after being an oil-producing country for 5 years, middle-income country, we now can only borrow at 5 years, but now for over 9%. Did we come or did we go? What we know is that Ghana attracted the highest interest rates on its borrowings amongst its peers in sub-Saharan Africa. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the price we are paying for mismanagement and incompetence under this NDC government. If you look at this, you will see that Ghana, amongst its peers, has the highest spreads. It's the highest spreads, higher than... I think that was the president saying he wasn't borrowing to drink tea. He will borrow more. Mr. Chairman, President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC government have also made several statements which have either turned out to be untrue or are contradictory. Either way, they have served to undermine the credibility of government and of its economic management team. These include the denial that government would ask for a bailout from the IMF, the promises to end doomsday, the flip-flops on ECG privatization, the promise to put cash in the pockets of Ghanaians, the denial that civil servants are likely to be laid off under a rationalization program to be implemented in 2017, the promise by President Mahama not to make any more promises. So one is no longer sure what to believe. Mr. Chairman, we turn to unemployment. Mr. Chairman, the net result of the economic policies of the John Mahama government is that the resulting declining growth of the economy is the unprecedented joblessness that afflicts our people today, and the apparent inability of government to find an urgent remedy to boost and produce the jobs we urgently need. Declining growth, doomsday, high electricity and utility bills, high interest rates, the massive exchange rate depreciation, high government debt, which has crowded out the private sector, rising non-performing loans, rising corruption, declining business confidence, and so on, have all contributed to high unemployment in Ghana. And the World Bank reports that youth unemployment in Ghana is 48%. The increasing unemployment in the country is a ticking time bomb, but the government has been bereft of ideas to create jobs. GIDA, for example, was used as a vehicle to siphon public funds and not for job creation. Mr. Chairman, as we approach an election year, the government has been trying to find explanation for this dismal economic performance. So we have now seen an engagement in a search for excuses. Mr. Chairman, rather than admitting its culpability for the dire situation of this economy, President John Mahama and the NDC government have resorted to providing various excuses for their failure. The excuses include the following. The NDC has argued that Ghana's economic problems are the result of the decline in the international commodity prices. Haven't you heard this argument? However, Mr. Chairman, the evidence does not support this assertion. In fact, contrary to what they would have us believe, this government has benefited from relatively positive international commodity price movements for gold and cocoa. Very positive. Let's take cocoa. Under the NPP, that is between 2001 and 2008, cocoa prices ranged between $965 to $3,021 per ton. The NPP enjoyed cocoa prices above $3,000 per ton for only 1 month in 8 years. Under the NDC, January 2009 to 2016, cocoa prices have ranged between $2,113 to $3,522. The NDC has enjoyed cocoa prices above $3,000 for 42 months. That is more than half the time they've been in office. While the average cocoa price under the NPP was $1,729, the average cocoa price under the NDC has been $2,873, which is 66% higher than under the NPP. So they don't have a case for the issue of cocoa. So let's look at gold. Mr. Chairman, under the NPP, from January 2001 to 2008, gold prices range from $260 to a high of $968 per ounce. Under the NDC, on the other hand, that is January 2009 to July 2016, gold prices have ranged from a low of $858 to a high of $1,770. While the average gold price under the NPP was $486, the average gold price under the NDC has been $1,317, which is 170% more than it was in the NPP period. The fact is that cocoa and gold prices have been 66% and 170% higher respectively under NDC and on average than the NPP. If with such low gold and cocoa prices, the NPP did not collapse the economy, how then can the NDC blame the much higher gold and cocoa prices they have had for Ghana's economic current mess? The crisis we find ourselves in today is not due to falls in commodity prices. It is due to corruption, incompetence, and mismanagement. Amongst its peers in the West African Monetary Zone, who all face the same international commodity and external conditions, Ghana is the worst performer on macroeconomic indicators. For the third successive year leading to 2015, Ghana could not achieve even one of the 6 macroeconomic convergence criteria, such as inflation, external reserves, central bank financing, the fiscal deficit, tax to GDP ratio, and exchange rate stability. Ghana scored 0 out of 6 and placed us last in the table of nations including Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and Nigeria. Cote d'Ivoire, next door, which has come through a civil war after an electoral dispute, has, thanks to disciplined and prudent management, recovered dramatically. Its GDP growth was 8.4%, while inflation is 1.2% in 2015. Cote d'Ivoire is now the largest producer of cashew in the world. and its economy is being transformed dramatically. So the question that you have to ask is, how can global phenomena skip Cote d'Ivoire and all the surrounding countries and only attack Ghana? How? How does it happen? Mr. Chairman, another excuse that has been proffered by President Mahama for the miserable performance of the economy under his watch is the 2013 Supreme Court petition. You and I were not there. Mr. Chairman, President Mahama claims that the election petition today, he is claiming that the election petition slowed down the economy. The problem with this desperate argument, however, is that it is contradicted by the data. That's why I like data. Mr. Chairman, the table on the screen shows that contrary to the claims by the president, except for the fiscal deficit, on virtually every single indicator, such as GDP growth, inflation, exchange rate, exports, Eurobond interest rate, debt to GDP ratio, and so on, every single indicator, the performance of the economy in 2013 was better than 2014 and 2015. The president's argument, therefore, does not hold water, and the election petition cannot be blamed. Indeed, the Mahama government had the best Eurobond rate of 7.875% in 2013, and that shows that investors in the international community had relatively more confidence in the Ghanaian economy in 2013 than in the years after. How the 2013 petition is the cause of the failure of the government is as explainable as the dwarfs in causing exchange rate depreciation. Mr. Chairman, what is more interesting is that at the time of the election petition hearing, the president told the country that the petition had no effect on his work. In December 2013, after meeting with the Council of State in Nebri, President Mahama stated that his government will, and I quote, will transit from the first to the second gear in 2014 after using this year to lay a very solid foundation for the economy, close quote. So he is telling us that he used the year 2013 to lay a very solid foundation for the economy. And today, he wants us to believe that what he said then was not true. In fact, the evidence is that for President Mahama, if you look at President Mahama and his tenure of office, that for President Mahama, since he was sworn into office after the 2012 election, 2013, the year of the election petition, represents his best economic performance. Mr. Chairman, I now want to turn to the very important issue of infrastructure. Mr. Chairman has touted its achievements in the last 8 years in its Green Book in the area of infrastructure. They've built roads, water projects, hospitals, schools, and so on. The burning question, however, for most Ghanaians is that if this government has increased Ghana's debt from 9.5 billion Ghana cedis to 105 billion so far, can they point to an equivalent value of projects? Unfortunately and sadly, the answer is no. The government is attempting to hoodwink Ghanaians by claiming a massive increase in infrastructure investment. Why do I say so? First, Mr. Chairman, if you sum the total cost of infrastructure expenditure undertaken by this government, this NDC government, the total cost from loans, from grants, from taxes, not just loans, grants and taxes, from 2009 to date. If you add all they have spent in infrastructure, it is less than $7 billion. Meanwhile, the government has borrowed the equivalent, as I have shown you, of some $39 billion. So where is the rest of the money? Indeed, according to the managing director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, most of Ghana's borrowing has been used for consumption and not for investment. The overpricing of contracts, corruption, and the absence of money considerations are partly responsible for this. Ladies and gentlemen, I saw two identical teachers' bungalows in Dambai Teacher Training College this year. One constructed under the MPP in 2007 and the other under the NDC in 2011. They are side by side. These two buildings are side by side. The one constructed by the MPP cost 195,000 Ghana cedis. But the one constructed by the NDC cost 900,000 Ghana cedis. 4.6 times more. It's the same building, the same design, the same specification on the same land, side by side. So what accounts for this huge difference? Another example is the runway rehabilitation in Kumasi Airport, which cost this country $23.8 million. Just the runway rehabilitation, not a new one, but rehabilitation, $23.8 million. Whereas the proposed new airport with runway and buildings and everything in whole is going to cost $25 million. And it is on record that Ethiopia is building its Shire airport at the cost of $21 million. Mr. Chairman, the issue of the AmeriPower deal is one episode. The issue of the AmeriPower deal is one episode of issues bordering on corruption and the failure to ensure value for money for the people of Ghana. In this deal, Ghana is basically purchasing 10 power gas plants for $510 million, even though the same plants can be acquired from GE, from the market, for $220 million. The government has claimed that the manufacturers of the plant, GE, would have provided the plant at a more expensive price. How can the manufacturer provide at a more expensive price than the middleman? It's only NDC government that can try to convince you of such an occurrence. The situation of overpricing contracts through the use of sole sourcing as the procurement method of choice is very typical of this John Mahama NDC government. The amount, ladies and gentlemen, the amount of $3.65 million from oil funds was used for the rebranding of 116 Metro Mass rapid transit buses. money earmarked for a supposed Osu railway. Meanwhile, the company that actually did the work of employing Ghanaians to do the branding of the buses says it charged only 11,600 Ghana cedis as the cost for the branding of all the 116 buses. So from 11,600 Ghana cedis, we reach 3,650,000 Ghana cedis, 3.65 million Ghana cedis. Egypt is constructing a 1,800 megawatt gas power plant at the cost of $1.3 billion. Abu Dhabi is constructing a 1,600 megawatt gas plant at the cost of $1.5 billion. Together, Ameri and Car Power will cost Ghana over $2 billion over 5 years. And yet they will give us only 550 megawatts of power. Mr. Chairman, the University of Ghana has acquired a loan facility of $217 million from the Israeli government to build a 600-bed teaching hospital at Lagos. 217 million for a 600-bed teaching hospital at Lagos. The cost of building a new 600-bed teaching hospital by the University of Ghana, however, is $30 million less than the cost of renovating and expanding the Ridge Hospital from 200 bed to 420 bed. How possible is this? Indeed, given the resources at its disposal, one should expect at least 4 to 5 times the quantum of investment that the NDC claims to have undertaken. The close to 33 billion of borrowing that has not been used for infrastructure expenditure could have done so much in this country. If you take $33 billion and ask yourself, what could you have done with $33 billion? You could have solved the water crisis in Ghana. You could have solved our energy problems. Every region in Ghana would have had 1,000 kilometers of asphalt road. We could have transformed agriculture. We could have put in place a world-class hospital in every region. We could have bought 1,000 ambulances for the Ghana Ambulance Service. We could have equipped our existing health and education institutions. And we could have built an additional 600 senior high schools that the government is trying to build currently. And we could have constructed the Accra-Kumasi-Paga railway line as well as the Western Railway line. And with all this, we would have still been left with some money. Mr. Chairman, the second reason why I say the NDC is attempting to hoodwink Ghanaians with claims of massive infrastructure investments is that the investment in infrastructure has actually been on the decline. Yes, investment in infrastructure in Ghana is on the decline, as I showed in a graph earlier. It is, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence shows that notwithstanding the massive increase in debt, the stock of capital expenditure as a percentage of GDP has actually been on the decline, and it has come down from an average of 11% during 2001 to 2008 to 5.7%. So you see this major decline in infrastructure spending from 11% average to 5.7% average. This means that contrary to all the government claims of an increase in infrastructure projects all over the country, the reality is that Ghana's expenditure on infrastructure relative to GDP is declining. The numbers indicate that government is investing about half what the NPP government used to invest. And this is a government that has discovered oil. But the government that did not have oil is investing twice as much relative to GDP than the government that had oil. Mr. Chairman, The third reason why I say the NDC is attempting to hoodwink Ghanaians with claims of massive infrastructure investment is that as I have stated, most of these investments are overpriced. Every project that it has Mr. Chairman, every project that it has undertaken whose cost has been inflated means job losses. If the building of the teachers' bungalow in Dambai can cost 5 times more under the NDC than under the NPP, then it explains why the NDC kills jobs. It means that 4 bungalows could have been built if someone like Nana Akufo-Addo had been president. It means that 4 times more building workers could have been employed and earned incomes from that money that went instead to corrupt practices. It means 4 times more teachers would have been employed and housed in Dambai. Ladies and gentlemen, leadership is ultimately about choices. One leader may prefer one village, one dam, whilst another may prefer one chief, one car. Mr. Chairman, the 4th reason why I say that the NDC is attempting to hoodwink Ghanaians with claims of massive infrastructural investments is that, in fact, all governments in the past have done infrastructure projects. There's no government in Ghana, including the military governments, all of them have done infrastructure projects. Indeed, in terms of projects accomplished relative to resources available, the MPP government of 2001 to 2008 under President John Dramani Mahama has a very impressive record. Very impressive. And I will come to that record shortly. Indeed, it was His Excellency President Mahama who told us in 2008 that any government touting infrastructure projects as its achievements is engaging in an exercise in mediocrity. So, what has changed? Ladies and gentlemen, the 5th reason why I say the NDC is attempting to hoodwink Ghanaians with claims of massive infrastructure investment is that infrastructure investment is not supposed to be for its own sake, but to increase productivity and production in the economy. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. If you have undertaken massive infrastructure investment and unprecedented infrastructure investment, then why is the economy in trouble? And this is why I was saying much earlier when I began, that if a farmer tells you that, oh, they've not been able to produce the corn, but they have used a lot of fertilizer, then you know they are not a very good farmer. The facts show that the impact of NDC infrastructure investments have not been translated to increased output, job creation, better living conditions for the people of Ghana. It is like a man who has been given lots of money and decides to build a big story building with no roof. Meanwhile, his children are hungry. He cannot pay school fees, healthcare, electricity bills, and so on. And when the children complain, he tells them that he has laid a good foundation for them. In contrast, Mr. Chairman, in contrast, the NPP government in 2001 to 2008 undertook significant infrastructure investments across the country in several sectors. In the area of water, for example, the Cape Coast Water Project, Tamale, Adansege, Winneba, Berkese, Weja, Bafi Krum, Akwapim Ridge, Akimodan, Koforidwa, New Tafu, Winneba Expansion, Kayak, Kwanyako, Bojoasi, Brimsu Dredging, Secondary Takradi Expansion, Kumasi Expansion, East-West Accra Interconnection. These are just some of the water projects. Then you have in education, construction of the campuses for the University of Development Studies in UDS, Yankpala, Navrongo, and Wa, construction of the Bolga Polytechnic, the Wa Polytechnic, established the University of Mines and Technology. 38 teacher training colleges were upgraded to diploma awarding institutions. 56 model senior schools were started and 31 were completed. 31 lecture theatre halls at various university campuses. The medical school at the University of Cape Coast was established. In health facilities were numerous. As I said, if you go to roads, the roads is a remarkable record. Accra, Yamuransa, Accra, Flao, Kejebu, Pepesu, Mansu, Asankragwa, Exim Junction, Takwa, Abuakwa, Bibiani, Tinga Bole, Pantai Mamfi, Panjo, Raura, Winchi Sampa, Tamale Yendi, Malam Interchange, Tetakwashi, Malam, Jessica Mbokese, Exim Junction, Takwa, Pantan Mamfi, Tetakwashi Interchange, Ashama Motorway, Achimota Interchange, Alajo Havano, Asafu Interchange, Ofanko Sawam, Apejwa Bunsu Enyinam Konongo Enijusu. This is just a sample. I have not finished. We built the West African gas pipeline, the Bui Dam. The construction of the 132 megawatt plant at Abuazi, the Takoradi T1 plant was initiated. The 220 Sunan Asogli plant was completed towards the end of the Kufuor administration. We built Jubilee House, Flagstaff House. We constructed world-class stadia in Accra and Kumasi. We built a new stadia in Esipong and Tamale, Jubilee Parks in all regional capitals, Accra Tema Commuter, Railway, Pedrosi Lodge rehabilitation of Tamale, Kumasi, and Takoradi airports. Mr. Chairman, let me make this point in regards to the rehabilitation of the airports. During Cannes 2008, flights flew directly from South Africa and Senegal to Tamale and took off directly from South Africa and Senegal to Tamale. This was in 2008. And today we are being deceived into thinking that they need to spend $100 million to fly pilgrims to the Hajj. Mr. President, of course, the key difference between the NDC and the MPP, however, is that the impact of the MPP's infrastructure investment, along with the structural reforms and prudent economic policies of President J. Kufuor, was felt positively in the economy. And let me tell you how it was felt positively. We saw an increase in GDP growth. This is what infrastructure investment is supposed to do, to help you grow the economy. We saw an increase in GDP growth from 3.7% to 9.1%. Reduction in corporate taxes to a massive increase in cocoa production. The National Youth Employment Program was established. The school feeding program was established. Capitation grant was established. National Health Insurance Scheme. Free maternal care. Metro mass transit. Introduction of the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty. And yes, we were HIPIC and we were paying teacher training allowances and nursing training allowances. you also saw a massive expansion of the financial sector. Mr. Chairman, what this goes to show is that infrastructure investment alone is not sufficient to drive an economy. You need to manage an economy with competence and to keep corruption under check if you are going to make progress. So now that we have dealt with the infrastructure excuse, let us now go to yet another excuse that the President Mahama has been giving us. Mr. Chairman, another argument that the President Mahama has been making recently is that the last 8 years have been spent building a good foundation, despite what he terms as challenges. In response to the reckless management of our country's economy and resources, which has led to Ghana back to the doorsteps of the IMF, the government has resorted to 3 paths. First, the government is imposing taxes on every conceivable item in an attempt to raise the resources to fill the fiscal deep hole that they had dug. In their desperation, taxes were imposed even on condoms and cutlasses, savings and investment, and so on. While already existing rates have seen increases, sometimes astronomical increases. Taxes on businesses have increased dramatically, and new taxes have been introduced. For example, we've seen an increase in the capital gains tax from 10 to 25%, withholding tax from 15 to 20%, introduction of the energy levy, 10% VAT on electricity, VAT on financial services, VAT on real estate, special import levy, and taxes have also been introduced on ambulances and bicycles. Secondly, the government has responded to this fiscal hole by cutting and abolishing all forms of allowances that are abolishable. So insensitive cuts have been included, such as research allowances to lecturers, nursing training allowances, and teacher training allowances. Thirdly, the government is also accumulating arrears in payments to contractors and other service providers. Mr. Chairman, the situation notwithstanding, the government's supplementary budget asserts that under the IMF program, there is a process of fiscal consolidation taking place with a decline in the fiscal deficit to 6.7% in 2015. But is fiscal consolidation really taking place? When the government received an IMF bailout, there was a clear expectation that the process of fiscal consolidation, which is a sustained decline in our deficit to GDP ratio, would take place. This, after all, is what IMF austerity programs are supposed to achieve. The decline in the fiscal deficit is supposed, therefore, to bring down inflation, improve debt sustainability, lower interest rates, support the private sector activity, increase investment, and above all, increase economic growth and alleviate poverty. The only problem, Mr. Chairman, however, is that Ghana is experiencing a unique type of fiscal consolidation, which has defied all expectations. Ghana's fiscal consolidation is apparently taking place in the midst of unsustainably high public debt levels, inflation that is stubbornly high and is currently at 16.7%, which is the 8th highest in Africa, a rising black hole of state-owned enterprise debt, which together with the debts owed by government to the bulk oil distribution companies and the lack of adequate supervision of the microfinance companies can potentially collapse the banking system. In addition, we have rising interest rates, the crowding out of the private sector, reduced business confidence, and declining economic growth. The Ghanaian experience is exactly the opposite of what fiscal consolidation is supposed to achieve. So if the fiscal consolidation is taking place, why aren't we seeing its impact on inflation, on interest rates, on economic growth, on investment, and access to credit? That is the mystery. Mr. Chairman, the IMF has stated that it has not concluded the third review of Ghana's program, which was expected to go to the board in June this year. Amongst the reasons that the IMF stated for the non-conclusion of the third review is that the fiscal data for 2015 is yet to be reconciled. This is a code phrase or euphemism for the possibility that the data is likely wrong. How can 2015 fiscal data, we are in September 2016, and you are saying that data as at September 2016 has not yet been reconciled? What is so complicated about that fiscal data? The Center for Economic Policy Analysis, CEPA, has pointed out that the fiscal data that the government presented shows that it has not accumulated any arrears as required by the IMF program. It also shows that it has actually cleared arrears at a faster rate than initially programmed, and that compensation to government employees, that's the wage bill, exceeded what was budgeted. The question that naturally arises from this state of affairs is that if the deficit was not financed by expenditure cuts or by accumulation of arrears, then how was it financed? This is why CEPA believes, and I agree with them, that the financing shortfalls are more likely to have been financed by the $1 billion Euro bond issued in 2015, along with the accumulation of arrears. Mr. Chairman, the 2016 supplementary budget has further muddied the waters by revealing a large unexplained discrepancy of 1.7 billion Ghana cedis in 2016, flowing over from 2015. It is a figure that the government has not been able to explain. There are books, there's a gap, which you say is a discrepancy. And when they ask you what is this discrepancy representing, $1.7 billion, you do not know. How can it is a figure that the government has been unable to explain? How can an amount of such a magnitude still be a mystery almost a year after 2015? What is the government hiding? It appears, Mr. Chairman, that even though this money that this is money that has been spent, the government is afraid to come clean because it will likely lead to a missing of the IMF performance targets. Should this be confirmed, it will mean that the fiscal deficit in 2015 is actually higher than what has been reported. This undermines the credibility of government. Arrears accumulation, Mr. Chairman, is the likely explanation of this discrepancy because the report about rising non-performing loans in the banking sector due to debt not being paid by public institutions, which is being again driven by the government's inability to pay its debt to institutions such as ECG, VRA, and so on. Mr. Chairman, I now turn to the issue of the public debt stock. By the end of 2008, following the adoption and implementation of the HIPIC initiative, the government's policy framework of fiscal discipline, the country's debt to GDP ratio had declined from 189% in 2000 to 32% of GDP by 2008. Indeed, from independence in 1957 to 2008, Ghana's total debt was 9.5 billion Ghana cedis. However, in the last 7 years alone, under this NDC government, Ghana's total debt has ballooned from 9.5 billion Ghana cedis to 100 billion Ghana cedis in 2015 and 105 billion Ghana cedis by May 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, 66% of Ghana's debt from independence, 66% of Ghana's debt has been accumulated under the presidency of John Dramani Mahama in just the last 3.5 years. 66% of Ghana's debt has been accumulated under the presidency of John Dramani Mahama in 3.5 years. Mr. Chairman, in terms of the dollar equivalent of the amount that has been borrowed, this government has borrowed some $39 billion in 8 years. When I mention this, they either get confused or pretend to get confused. So, for the sake of clarity, I have put in this document the table that shows them clearly the dollar equivalent of all the amounts borrowed from 2009 to 2016. So you will see that you will see the dollar equivalent from 2008 of how much was borrowed all the way from 2009 to 2016. So this is where you are getting your 38.79 billion or some 39 billion. In fact, by December 2016, the government will have borrowed by $42 billion. The government will claim, no doubt, that the book value of the debt is $26 billion. So it would be impossible, they will say, that they could have borrowed 36 billion. Quite frankly, it is a weak argument. The only reason why the book value of the debt is 26 billion is because we are applying today's exchange rate, which the same government succeeded in collapsing, to the value of the debt and not the exchange rate at the time the money was borrowed. Mr. Chairman, with this major increase in the debt, Ghana's debt to GDP ratio has increased from 32% in 2008 to 72%. The calculation of the debt to GDP ratio used by the minister is just plain wrong and misleading. The government has taken the total debt stock in May 2016 and divided it by the projected GDP in December 2016 to arrive at the debt to GDP ratio of 63%. This is statistical gimmickry. If you ask the minister how he achieved this dramatic reduction in the debt to GDP ratio in either January 2016 or May 2016, he will be unable to tell you. All that has happened is that he has used a higher projected GDP number to do the calculation. We know what the GDP was at the end of the first quarter. The government knows this. So all he should have done was to take the debt at the end of the first quarter, divide it by the GDP at the end of the first quarter, and he would get 71% of GDP, which is what we should be. But at that time, the minister wanted to go for a sovereign bond, so he was trying to make the books look better than they really were. Mr. Chairman, The real effects of the reckless borrowing undertaken in the last 7 years is seen in the magnitude of interest payments Ghana has been burdened with, which has meant that vital resources which should have gone into sectors such as infrastructure development and social services are now being pumped into settling our debt obligations. Mr. Chairman, interest payments in 2015, interest payments amounted to 9.6 billion Ghana cedis. That figure of 9.6 billion Ghana cedis was more than the total debt stock of Ghana at the end of 2008, which was 9.5 billion Ghana cedis. To put the interest payments in context, we should note entire allocations in the 2016 budget to the Ministries of Roads, Highways, Trade and Industry, Food and Agriculture, Water Resources, Works and Housing, Youth and Sports, Ministry of Transport, all of these 6 ministries. The budget allocation to all of these ministries was only 2.1 billion Ghana cedis. But we are paying interest in 2016 of 10.5 billion Ghana cedis. As interest payments go up, the space for development shrinks. And this is all due to financial indiscipline. You will see that interest payments at the end of 2008 was only 680 million Ghana cedis. 680 million, not even up to a billion. Today we are paying 10.5 billion Ghana cedis. So you see the dramatic increase in interest payments. And then again, ladies and gentlemen, you will see this massive jump in interest payments over the last 4 years has yet again occurred under the presidency of John Dramani Mahama. Mr. Chairman, the interest payments on the debt stock in 2015 was 6 times Ghana's oil revenue. The oil discovery has basically been compromised over the last 7 years by the government's recklessness. Ghana's interest payments as a percentage of GDP has declined from 7.9% in 2001 to 2.3% by 2008. But it has now increased to 6.5% in 2015. Mr. Chairman, you see this again, this dramatic increase in interest payments as a percentage of GDP, again under the presidency of John Dramani Mahama. The data also shows that during the period of MPP governance, Mr. Chairman, this is important. During the period of MPP governance, capital expenditure, that is expenditure on infrastructure,